think if I were given the closing argument, I would sort of do something like this, just as far as a shortened version. I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, Kyle is innocent as he sits here today under the laws of the United States of America, unless and until that prosecutor over there is proven otherwise beyond any reasonable doubt. To the contrary, during this trial, the prosecutor did the opposite. Their own witnesses proved beyond all doubt that Kyle acted reasonably and in self-defense. The judge just instructed you that the reasonableness of Kyle's actions of self-defense are to be considered by you in light of his age, his experience, his circumstances at the moment the decisions were made. So at the moment the decisions were made, he was a scared 17-year-old who was being chased down the street by violent, destructive, aggressive rioters who were aggressively attempting to injure or kill him. The prosecution established that with their own evidence before Kyle ever took the stand. And I know that you, the jury, have been paying close attention this entire time, and I want to deeply and gratefully thank you for it. I wish I could know what's in your head. I wish you could ask me any of the questions that you have, or even tell me if you've heard enough and you just want to be able to go back into that jury room, deliberate, and take a vote. But since you can't ask me questions, and Kyle's life, liberty, the rest of his life on my shoulders, I do have to keep talking, at least so long as to convince myself, my own conscience, that I've done absolutely everything that I can do to make sure that Kyle gets to go home here today, tomorrow, this week, to his family. And it's almost Thanksgiving. And that's my goal. I want him to be able to go home with his family and have Thanksgiving dinner. Now, the prosecutors called witness A, and I'd go through each of them like this. They thought witness A would help their case. However, what did witness A really tell you? Do you remember when I cross-examined witness A and he told you that X, Y, and Z happened? And then I talk about how that supports the case of self-defense and really destroys the prosecution's case. Then I do it for witness B. Do you remember what witness B really told you? When I asked witness B this, he told you something. He told you something the prosecutors didn't even want you to know, and so on. For instance, some of the witnesses here that the state called helped the defense. Ryan Balch. He was the military veteran who carried an AR-15 style rifle that night also and patrolled the streets of Kenosha, they said. He told you how Rosenbaum made ominous threats within earshot of Rittenhouse. If I catch any one of you guys alone tonight, I'm going to effing kill you. That's what he testified to hearing Rosenbaum shouting. You heard from Richie McGinnis. He was the state's witness. He was the videographer. He described Rosenbaum as chasing Rittenhouse. He testified. He told you that Rosenbaum was lunging for Rittenhouse's gun. So when Binger pressed McGinnis to concede that he didn't know what Rosenbaum's intent was, as if it mattered, McGinnis said, and this is devastating to the state's case. Well, McGinnis replied, he said, F you, and then he reached for a weapon. That was the testimony of the state's witness. He described Kyle Rittenhouse as doing all that he could do to flee, to get away, even shouting friendly, friendly, friendly at Rosenbaum to convey that he meant no harm. And obviously you heard from Gage Grosskreutz, another one of the state's witnesses who helped the defense case. He helped our case. He testified that he carried a loaded pistol that night, illegally concealed. He acknowledged that he aimed his pistol at Kyle when Kyle shot him. Now, although Grosskreutz said that he didn't intentionally aim the gun and said he wouldn't have fired, Kyle didn't know that. Kyle wouldn't know that. No reasonable person would know that. With those witnesses, the state has proven self-defense. They've proven they've proven self-defense and destroyed their own case with their own witnesses, even ever before Kyle ever testified. And then I'd go into something like this. Look, even though Kyle has a constitutional right, as we all do, to say absolutely nothing, doesn't have to question a single witness, doesn't have to say a word. He did. He took the witness stand. He told you what happened in his own words, as well as what didn't happen. You saw him. We all saw him. We saw, what did we see? The eyes of a scared 17-year-old kid who was being chased down the street by a violent, aggressive, and destructive mob who were attempting to injure or kill him. Now, the judge instructed you that the law doesn't judge Kyle's decisions to defend himself under a standard of perfection or 20/20 hindsight, but rather under a standard of a reasonable, scared, inexperienced 17-year-old who's running for his life and trying to get away from a violent mob. The judge instructed you that the law requires you only to consider the circumstances at the moment that Kyle acted to defend himself in determining whether doing so was reasonable. That means that the prosecution's entire case attacking Kyle for his mere presence in Kenosha, for what he was wearing that night, for having a firearm, for having an AR-15 in particular, and so on. None of that has anything to do with the circumstances that the law requires you to consider. The moment that trigger was pulled, through that roughly 3-minute period when Kyle was desperately trying to get away from that crowd and being chased and being attacked. And then I shoot down some of the prosecutor's claims of provocation. For instance, that it never even was mentioned in the opening, that there was no evidence of provocation. You look at the videos, how is that provocation when he's running away? Their only claim is, which wouldn't hold up, that the AR-15 itself is provocation, which just can't be. The only other claim is that the first shooting just provoked the whole mob, and that's it. It was game on, and they could do anything they wanted to him at that point. That is not provocation. So it's not reasonable for a scared and inexperienced 17-year-old kid, if it's not reasonable for a scared and inexperienced 17-year-old kid to use deadly force in his own self-defense at a time when he's running away from a mob of armed and violent rioters who are physically attempting to injure or kill him, then self-defense can never be reasonable. Then self-defense is dead. Now, more than ever, when law enforcement, as in Kenosha, has clearly demonstrated that they will not, or very well may not, be there to protect you from an angry mob, self-defense is precious, must be protected, must be held sacred. And what has this prosecution really been but an extension of the mob that was there burning Kenosha that night and attacking Kyle Rittenhouse? This is really the last attempted blow of that mob using these prosecutors, the last attempted blow to harm Kyle, not because it's right or just, but because, why? The mob wants it. So there, I think that would have lasted most of the time, and then that's where you get into the ending that you have memorized. Now, there was a story that I stolen from Jerry Spence on that he will give at closing arguments, especially in criminal cases, that I have used before and received acquittals before, not because it's insincere, but because it gets the jurors thinking about the grave nature of their responsibility. Because the closing shouldn't just be, recapping the events that happened. It should be appealing personally with the jurors and imparting the importance of what they're about to do. So here's the story, and you may have heard this before, but again, I have used this before, and I absolutely would use it here. It's a story, and you're telling the jury a story, and they love stories. Everybody loves stories. It's a story of a wise old man and a smart aleck boy who wanted to show up The boy wanted to show up the wise old man as a fool. So one day the boy caught a small bird in the forest, and he had a plan. He brought the bird cupped between his hands. So, I mean, this demonstrated to the jury. He had the bird cupped into his hands. And he went up to the old man and said, old man, what do I have in my hands? To which the old man would answer, you have a bird, my son. Then the boy would say, old man, is the bird alive or is it dead? If the old man said the bird was dead, the boy would open his hands and the bird would fly freely back to the forest. But if the old man said the bird was alive, then the boy would crush the little bird, crush it and crush it, crush it until it was dead. So the smart aleck boy sauntered up to the old man and said, old man, what do I have in my hands? And the old man said, you have a bird, my son. Then the boy said with a malevolent grin, old man, is the bird alive or is it dead? And the old man with sad eyes said, the bird is in your hands, my son. And so, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the case and the life of Kyle Rittenhouse is in yours. And then I'd always end, and there would be silence in the courtroom. And then I would always end with something like this, because remember, Binger's minion gets to come up one last time, or it could be Binger who gets to cut up. They get to have the last say in a criminal case, and that's the way it is in a civil case as well. So they get to talk last, and look how dirty they went. And this prosecutor, the defense lawyer, didn't say this, and he should have. This is why I do it. This is what I'd say, something like this. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecutor will have the opportunity to get up one more time and talk to you. Know that I'm not allowed to respond after he does so, but you know that I would if I could. And I could shoot down absolutely everything that he will say, just as I have this entire trial. So I want you, in looking at the jury in the eyes, I want you to speak for me. When you go into that room and begin your deliberations, be my voice in that room. You can go in there, choose a foreperson, and take a vote. You know, there's no need to delay. Vote not guilty. Sign the verdict form, and let's send Kyle home with his family. And that's where I'd stop. So something like that. That's what I do. I think you have to be dramatic at the beginning to get their attention, to set the theme. I think you have to be dramatic and sincerely dramatic in the end as well, because it's a life or death situation. Yeah, this is very much like To Kill a Mockingbird. What happened in To Kill a Mockingbird? Well, you had an innocent person who was also an unpopular defendant in this particular environment. That's basically what you have with Kyle Rittenhouse. You have an innocent kid who didn't set out there to kill anybody, who, whether he was misguided in doing so or not, was cleaning spray paint off of a building earlier in that day, was asking people if they needed medical attention, was wanting to do the job that the worthless police in Kenosha were not doing. And you had a 17-year-old kid who's making rash and unwise decisions, as 17-year-old kids do. That's what you had with Kyle Rittenhouse. That's what you had. And you know, he was an unpopular target for these prosecutors and for, well, the political left. Just today, the president of the United States, Joe Biden, called him commented. The jury's about to begin deliberations. You have the president calling him a vigilante and basically calling for his conviction. Can you imagine that? He is in To Kill a Mockingbird right now. He is in a courtroom with people watching all over the place who are out for blood. The mob wants justice. But up there on the balcony are a bunch of people who really believe in him and who know he's innocent and who still have some faith in the system.